In this video, we're going to talk about creating an intuitive course organizational structure and how you can create continuity, provide context, and integrate your objectives and outcomes into your material just by using the simple structural and organizational tools that are within the LMS. Before I get started, this video is actually adapted from a presentation given by Amy Spielmaker, who is an instructional designer at Western Oregon University. So I do want to properly attribute her work. I've just adapted this and created examples so that you can see what it looks like within Blackboard. Let's start by talking about why organization matters. When you're in a face-to-face class, the context for each piece of material is given very naturally and very intuitively. You're providing students with the details of what each part of your lesson is and what purpose it serves, all in the flow of how you're teaching and how you're interacting with people face-to-face. Remote and online students don't have the benefit of that natural dialogue, so we have to make sure that we provide it to them manually. There are more and less effective ways of doing that, and I have examples of each. We're going to walk through them. When we're in Blackboard, one thing we can talk about is how you decide to make this information available to students. I typically see this in one of two ways, and they are both perfectly valid. One is to have a master content area on the navigation menu with folders for each week inside, which is the example that you're looking at right now. Another is to have a content area for each week, which lists then down the navigation menu or navigation bar. Either one works perfectly well. I used the master content area for this example because it's a little bit easier to see text, and text is kind of important. So our first point is about how we choose to title things. As you can see in this example, I have 3 weeks with progressively more detailed information included in the title. Obviously, one provides me with the most complete idea of what I, as a student, would want to know when I opened up the page or clicked the link. So week 1 doesn't really tell me much at all. I should have an idea that this is where I should start, but it's pretty limited. And week 2 tells me the topic, but actually I have no way of knowing that this is week 2 because there's no date or sequencing information. So I might not know when I should open this folder and start working on the material inside. Now week 3 gives me all of the information I need. The week tells me what size the lesson is and roughly how long I have to work through that material. 3 is the sequence number and the date, which both serve to tell me when I should be starting the work, and the topic gives me an immediate piece of context for what I'll be learning about. Topics should, by and large, be traceable to your outcomes and/or objectives. These labeling and titling of ideas and content pieces carry through to the content. So it's all about helping students map items in your course both literally and conceptually. So if you have an assignment for the week, you should title it in a way that ties back to the weekly topic. So we want to avoid things like assignment 1.1, assignment 1.2, assignment 2.1, because it just makes it that little bit harder for students to connect their work with what they're learning. And we want to keep impressing this flow of continuity from material to activity to assessment to achievement. It's also really helpful for students when they go back to look at grades and feedback because they can easily identify what's what. Point number 2, organizing. Let's take a look at our week 1 folder. So it's just a big list of our material for the week. Now, if I'm really sharp, I might intuit that I should work my way from the top down. But this is still highly confusing because I have no idea as a student what's important, what I'm supposed to be taking away from each content item, and how each piece connects to the other. Outlining and organization is your solution to this. Or to put it another way, you want to organize material by the way students will interact with it. So let's hop over into week 2 to see how that might be done. First things first, I have actually introduced the topic for the week. I've given a short overview of what we're going to be covering. I tend to mentally separate my passive and active learning materials. So I have my reading, listening, watching material in one folder and my assignments and objectives in another. This also keeps my page from getting really overwhelmingly long, which is less intimidating to look at, and it makes it very clear how each piece of material should be interacted with. I know if I'm in the reading, listening, watching, then whatever it is that I'm doing should be either read, listened to, or watched. You can also add descriptive text for each folder to add even more clarity about what is happening within each one. And if I open up a folder, you'll see that this general idea is applied to the items as well. I've added a little labeling that again reinforces what the purpose of each content item is. You can also see that I've done kind of a step above beginner building, but I've used the tools to embed the content in the context of my actual Blackboard course. And I'm not going to get into the how-to, but what this does is it just streamlines the content again so that students don't have to leave the learning environment quite so often. The next step in this build process is the what and the why. And if you've ever heard me talk about building content in Blackboard, you probably saw this coming, but the next step after effective titling and a clear organizational scheme is to tell your students why they're being asked to do whatever it is you're asking. Read, listen, post to a discussion board, complete a quiz, whatever it happens to be. So none of this has to be extensive, especially since you are the content expert already and you have this material more or less ready to go. You're just making small edits to place things in context. And if we open week 3, we can see effective ways of how to apply this. In this folder, the first thing that you can see is that I've introduced the week in a more complete way. I have my introduction to the topic and the objectives, which have been written in the student perspective so that they serve as a learning check, and a brief content overview. So here's what we'll be learning, here's what you're going to take away, and here's what's included. I've also listed what is within each folder on the folder description, which again is helping students manage their time and they can make the decisions that they need to make to be successful with that. It also is very helpful for students who are trying to find things again if they have to revisit content. Now, if we open one of these folders, you'll see that again, all of this has been applied to the individual items as well. There's nothing more than a sentence or two for each of these, but it is hugely impactful in directing students towards the big takeaways from each piece that you've included. And I will also say that this can be helpful for you when you're trying to decide whether something is aligned with the outcomes. If you can't quickly articulate why it's important, then maybe you don't need it or you need to replace it with something else. This is all the same material from week 1. It's just been properly labeled, appropriately organized, and put into context. So to review, when you're building content for remote delivery, we have to be much more specific and careful about how material is presented. And it's not hand-holding, it's an effective strategy for a new method of delivery. And all of that can be accomplished by adding complete labels, organizing things by how students interact with the pieces they're in, and providing simple explanatory text. It's all pretty easy.